In the last section, we started talking about the prop system in React. Remember, this is all about passing data from a parent to a child. A child cannot pass data back up to the parent through the prop system directly. We can kind of do it indirectly. We'll see examples of that later on, but the prop system is generally about communicating information from a parent to a child. Now, one other quick thing that I neglected to mention in the last section is that props is short for properties. Just so you know, a little bit of trivia. All right, so how are we going to do this? Well, when we use the prop system, there's kind of two stages. There's the first stage in which we want to provide information from the parent to the child, and then the second stage in which the child consumes or makes use of that information. So let's first focus on how we provide information from the parent to the child. It's going to look a little bit like this right here. So we are going to find in the parent component where we show an instance of the comment detail. Remember, we do that right here inside the app component right now. To provide some information down to that comment detail, we're going to write out what looks like just about any other property or attribute that we've been providing to JSX already. We're going to say the property name equals, and then the value for that property. This information is then going to show up inside of the comment detail. Now that syntax right there looks very similar to a lot of the syntax we've already been making use of inside of JSX. For example, class name equals comment, href equals / alt equals avatar. So the syntax here for providing a prop to a child, very similar to what you're already used to. The other thing I want to mention about this property that we're providing right now is the name that I chose right there. I said author equals. There's nothing special about me using the name author. It's totally up to you on how you want to name this property that you're passing from the parent down to the child. We could have just as easily called it name or name of author, or we could have called it person who wrote this, or whatever you want it to be. But in general, we try to make it at least make some amount of sense. In the context of making a comment, it definitely makes sense to have a prop named author, because this is the author of the person who made this comment. But again, you can change that thing to be whatever value you want it to be. And you'll notice in this case, the prop that I provided is a hard-coded string that says Sam. If we wanted to, we could just as easily place those curly braces and then reference some JavaScript variable inside of here. So maybe we have some JavaScript variable inside of our component called author. And we could reference it like so. But for this first take, we're just going to hard code some value. Oop, not Sam, but Sam. Okay, so we're just going to hard code the value for this first go through. Okay, so let's flip back over to our app component, and we're going to try to add on this first prop of author. All right, so back over here, I'm going to find my comment detail, and I'm going to add in a prop of author, and I'll set it equal to Sam. Oh, I keep on putting same. There we go. And then I'll do the same thing on the next one. So this one over here, let's do Alex, and I'll put on an author of about Jane for the third one. And I think we'll just stick with three comments, for right now. So I'm going to delete these last two down here. Now, take notice of what we're doing here. We are providing the same property name to each of these comment details, but each of them has a different value. So what this tells us is that when we provide a prop to a component, it's always going to a unique version of that component. And this prop right here of author equals Sam is not going to be somehow shared with this second component or the third component over here. This prop is unique and only being passed to this one very particular instance of the comment detail. All right, so now that we've provided some detail or some information to a child, we have to open up that child component, like the actual source code for it, and make sure that we consume this information. Remember, it's a two-step process. On the one hand, we provide information. On the other side, we consume the information. So over inside of comment detail, we need to somehow get access to that prop that we have provided to this component. That prop is going to show up inside of an object that is provided as the first argument to this function. So up to this point, we've not been referring to any arguments up here for this function. But in fact, it's always going to be provided with one argument, the first argument, which by convention we refer to as props. Right now, let's just console log that props argument and see what happens when we refresh our page. So I'm going to put that console log in there. I'm going to save this file, and then I'll flip back over to my browser. Now I'm going to also open up my Chrome inspector so I can see that console log. And here's my console, and there's the three console logs. So I've got object 1, Object 2, and Object 3. Each of these objects that you see right here are from the 3 instances of comment detail that we have now created. You'll notice that that props object has a key value pair inside of it now. The key is author, or in other words, the name of the prop that we provided inside the app. And the value is the individual name that we provided to each of those comment details. So now to consume this prop in our comment detail, we can find where we are currently making use of the name, or have the hard-coded name of Sam, which is in this anchor tag right here. I'm going to remove Sam. I'll put in my curly braces to indicate that I'm about to reference a JavaScript variable, and then inside there, I'll reference props.author, like so. So now whenever this comment detail is shown on the screen, the comment detail is going to look at that props object. It's going to see that there is an author property in there. It's going to take that author name and stick it into this anchor tag. So let's flip back over to our browser after saving this file, now that we are referring to the props.author. And back over here, we'll see that our names have been updated for each of the comments to Sam, Alex, and Jane, which perfectly match up to the different property values that we provided to those components. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's the entire prop system in a nutshell. All we have to do is provide some information from the parent to the child by adding in an attribute like this right here. And then in the child, we will reference that props argument. That is an object that contains the information that we provided from the parent. And then we will refer to that prop inside of our JSX. That's all we got to do. It's going to be the exact same series of steps over and over and over again. All right, so let's remove that console log. I don't think we need that anymore. And then we'll take a quick pause right here. When we come back in the next section, we're going to also attempt to customize our time and our blog content through this prop system as well. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.